Welcome to the Kindness Extremist podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people all over the world about the importance of kindness. And I am obsessed with how we can bring more kindness into our daily lives and restore balance to a deeply unbalanced world. Every episode, I'll give you 3 practical strategies to create a kinder world, and I'll do it in 30 minutes or less. No fluff, just valuable, actionable content that you can implement in your life immediately after listening to help you actively create a kinder world. There's no time to waste. Let's dive in. Welcome back, my friend, to episode 22 of the Kindness Extremist podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards. I need to be completely real with you right from the start. Today's episode is going to be one of the most challenging conversations we've ever had on this podcast. We're diving into territory that makes people want to run for the hills, and I completely understand why. Today, we're talking about radicalization. Before we go any further, and to ensure there's no confusion, while the word extremist is used in a tongue-in-cheek kind of a way with my podcast title, being a kindness extremist, aka someone who's extremely committed to creating a kinder world, is the complete opposite of the kind of extremism we're going to be discussing today, which is rooted in hatred, division, and sometimes violence. I know. You might be thinking, Shola, I came here for kindness extremism, not the other kind of extremism. So I get it. I feel you. But here's the thing. If we're serious about creating a kinder world, we can't ignore the reality that more and more people in our communities, our workplaces, and sadly, even our families are being pulled towards radical ideologies. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, radicalization occurs when an individual adopts an increasingly extremist set of beliefs and aspirations. And my friend, this isn't happening in some faraway place to people we don't know. As I just mentioned, this is happening to our neighbors, our coworkers, and yes, sometimes our loved ones. More so than ever, people have reached out to me after my speaking events through my email list and sometimes on social media, expressing fear that friends and family members are becoming susceptible to radical ideas. The pain in their voices, the desperation in their messages, it breaks my heart every single time. But here's what I've learned through years of studying this issue and working with families who are navigating this nightmare. Our typical responses to radicalization, shame, anger, condescension, and attempts to use logic to help them out of their beliefs just fail miserably. They actually make the problem worse. So today I want to offer you a different path in dealing with these situations. It's a counterintuitive approach rooted in 3 essential strategies that I'll cover in detail in this episode. Before we dive in, though, I need to be crystal clear about something. If you're concerned that someone you know might be planning to harm themselves or others, please don't try to handle this alone. Involve teachers, parents, mental health professionals, or the authorities as needed. What we're discussing today is about maintaining relationships and creating conditions for positive change, not about ignoring genuine safety threats. Okay. Now, that's been said. If you're ready, fellow kindness extremists, let's do some of the hardest and most important work of our lives. The first thing we need to understand is that people aren't born as radicals or extremists. This is a process that happens slowly and steadily over time. It's not like someone wakes up one morning and suddenly decides to adopt extreme beliefs. Understanding this process is crucial because it means there are warning signs that we can learn to recognize. Let me share the 3 phases of radicalization that researchers have identified. First is the sensitivity phase. This is often driven by feelings of insignificance. This could be caused by a loss of status, a strong sense of humiliation, poor career prospects, or the belief that another group is responsible for their problems. Think of someone who's lost their job and passed over for promotion or feels like society has left them behind. Second is the group membership phase. This is when the individual joins a group of like-minded people and adopts the norms and values of that group to strengthen their commitment to the cause. This is where online communities become extremely powerful and sometimes dangerous. And third is the action phase. This is when people turn to using violence against others. This is the phase we're all trying to prevent. Now let me share the specific warning signs that you should watch out for. The first warning sign is isolation from prior relationships. The person withdraws from relationships and social activities that they once enjoyed. Healthy connections with friends, family, colleagues, or social activities that were central to their lives suddenly hold no interest for them. I remember speaking with a mother at a book signing who told me, "My son used to love playing basketball with his friends every weekend. He was on the church's youth group. He had a close relationship with his grandfather. All of that just stopped." Now he spends all of his time alone in his room, and when he does come out, he's angry and hostile. The second warning sign is behavior change and hostile attitude. The person openly expresses anger, resentment, or hostility toward a specific group of people, and in some cases, communicates a desire to cause them harm. They also become angry when presented with alternative viewpoints. This isn't solely about having strong political opinions, which is common during these times. This is about expressing genuine hatred and dehumanizing language toward entire groups of people. This is about becoming enraged when anyone questions their beliefs or presents different information. The third warning sign is online obsession. The person spends the majority of their time intensely engaged with an online community, sharing problematic content on social media, and being singularly focused on being around people who share the same radical beliefs and ideologies. What makes this particularly insidious is that these online communities provide something that might be missing from the person's real life: a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and a sense of significance. They're not just consuming content, they're finding identity and community in these spaces. More on that to come on the second strategy of this episode. For now, though, here's what I want you to understand. If you recognize these signs in someone you care about, your natural impulse might be to panic or immediately confront them. Please resist that urge. Remember, this is a process, and interrupting it requires patience and a sound strategy. So for now, your first practical takeaway of the episode is this: simply start paying attention, really paying attention, not in a surveillance way, but in a caring way. Notice changes in behavior, relationships, and interests. Document these changes if necessary. You can't address what you don't acknowledge, and many families miss the early warning signs because they don't want to believe this could happen to their loved one. The key is to approach this with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of thinking, how could they believe this garbage? Try thinking, what need is this meeting for them that wasn't being met before? Which leads us nicely to the second strategy of the episode. This concept is going to change everything about how you understand radicalization. When people approach me about radicalized individuals in their lives, they usually do so with exasperation and anger at their inability to see the truth. They ask me questions like, how can I be kind to people who traffic in unhinged conspiracy theories? Or, if I believe that 2 + 2 = 4, and they believe that 2 + 2 = Tuesday, how can we ever find common ground if we don't share the basic foundation of reality? Those are fair questions, but here's what I've learned. Most bad behaviors are an unskilled expression of an unmet need. Let me say this again because it's so important. Most bad behaviors are an unskilled expression of an unmet need. What if we change the way that we look at folks who have succumbed to the pull of radicalization? What if we realize that their behavior was an expression of an unmet need? Embracing this perspective could change everything. In many cases, people who become radicalized are deeply unhappy and have been led to believe that someone else is the cause of their unhappiness. Because of this, they have a need to feel in control of their lives, a need to feel significant, a need for justice, a need to belong, or a need just to simply feel good about themselves. Sit with this idea for a minute. If someone feels powerless in their personal life, radical ideologies offer them a sense of power and control. If someone feels insignificant or invisible, these communities tell them that they're part of something important, something that matters. If someone feels isolated and lonely, these groups provide instant belonging and acceptance. The tragedy is that if people can't skillfully find a way to address those needs in an appropriate manner that doesn't harm anyone, it's clear to see how they may be drawn toward less skilled means of getting their needs met. Most important, remember this truth. Somehow and in some way, being part of a radicalized community is fulfilling a need that is missing from your loved one's life. Let me share an analogy that might help this make sense. There are actually a lot of similarities between a person who's been radicalized and a person who's suffering from substance addiction. Both may begin with a desire to soothe an unmet need, and the behavior can escalate over time to continue to have the need met. Both behaviors can come reinforced by people in their social networks who share an interest in the same behaviors. In both cases, healing cannot begin until there's a firm realization that they have a problem. Both won't likely respond favorably to being shamed, humiliated, or spoken to in a condescending manner. If anything, that will only deepen their problematic behaviors. This understanding completely changes our approach. Instead of attacking the beliefs, we need to address the underlying needs. Instead of trying to shame them out of their ideology, we need to understand what that ideology is providing for them emotionally and psychologically. So, your second practical takeaway is this: the next time you're interacting with someone who holds radical views, ask yourself, what unmet need might this behavior be expressing? Are they seeking control, significance, belonging, justice, understanding? Once you identify the possible unmet need, you can begin to think about healthier ways that need might be met. I'm not saying this work is easy. I hope you understand that it's not. I'm not even saying that radicalization can be cured 100% of the time, because that would be irresponsible. What I am saying is that understanding the underlying needs creates space for compassion, and compassion creates space for connection, and connection is the potential antidote to radicalization. Now that I've set the stage here, let's get to the final and unquestionably the hardest strategy of the episode. Hey, fellow kindness extremists, it's me, Shola. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're mowing what I'm growing, if you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Okay, I'll stop. If you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, I would love it if you would take a moment to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating and a review. Those incredibly kind acts go so far in helping me to reach as many people as possible who will join the movement to actively create a kinder world. I appreciate you so much, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Now we're going to get to the heart of today's episode. What I'm about to share here might be the hardest thing I've ever asked anyone to do on this podcast. It requires strength that most people don't possess. It requires a level of emotional maturity that our society rarely teaches any of us. But it's also the only approach that has any hope of creating positive change. I call it radical civility. Radical civility is an active demonstration of respect and the ability to disagree without disrespect. To be painfully clear, I'm not expecting you to use this strategy with a radicalized person who you don't know or care about. I realize that may be a bridge too far, so I'm not going to insult you or embarrass myself by suggesting it. However, if this is a person you care about, a family member, a personal friend, or someone whose well-being matters deeply to you, then radical civility is the only answer. Here's what radical civility does not mean. It doesn't mean agreeing with their beliefs or pretending that you do. It doesn't mean enabling harmful behavior. It doesn't mean ignoring red flags or safety concerns. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat or allowing yourself to be abused. Here's what radical civility does mean. It means listening to understand, not to argue. It means showing respect for the person even when you can't respect their views. It means refusing to engage in name-calling, shaming, or condescension. It means staying curious about their experience rather than getting defensive about your own beliefs. It means creating space for them to question their own beliefs without feeling like they're being attacked. Let me tell you why this approach is so powerful. Many radicalized people are actively looking for a fight. They're expecting you to call them stupid, unhinged, or crazy. And when you do that, you're playing directly into their hands. You're confirming their belief that the other side is hostile and unreasonable. You're adding gasoline to the fire that you're trying to extinguish. But when you show up with radical civility, when you listen with genuine curiosity, when you refuse to take the bait and engage in verbal combat, you disrupt their entire narrative. You become harder to dismiss. You create cognitive dissonance that might, over time, create space for them to question their own beliefs. Now, I need to share something important with you. This approach requires you to be the strongest person in the room. It requires you to manage your own emotions while they may be expressing hateful, hurtful, or dangerous ideas. It requires you to stay grounded in your values while they try to provoke you into abandoning them. This is not weakness. This is the ultimate demonstration of strength. Allow me to share a hypothetical scenario based on numerous situations that I've seen throughout the years. Let's imagine that your adult son has become involved with an extremist group online. And as a kindness extremist, you've raised your son to value equality and justice, and now he's actively spouting hateful rhetoric about a particular group of people, and you're devastated by this. Initially, you were so heartbroken by this that you actually considered cutting him off completely. Your second instinct was just to engage in heated arguments every time you spoke to him in hope of nudging him out of his beliefs. Neither approach worked. In fact, both seemed to push him deeper and deeper into his radical community. So, out of desperation, you tried something else. Instead of arguing with his beliefs, you started asking questions about his experiences. Tell me about your day. What's been challenging for you lately? In other words, you stopped trying to change his mind and started to understand what's going on inside of his heart. Slowly, very slowly, he began to open up about the real issues in his life. He'd been struggling with depression after losing his job. He felt like a failure as a man and as a provider. He felt invisible and insignificant. It became clear that your son was actively using this online community as a way to express his anger while also using the group to feel a sense of purpose and belonging that he wasn't finding anywhere else. Once you understood the underlying needs, you began to address those needs in healthier ways. You helped him to find a therapist. You connected him with job training programs. You made sure he knew that he was loved and valued regardless of his employment status. So here's the thing that's so challenging about these type of situations. This is not a quick fix, but with time, patience, and respect, you're creating the space for his needs to be met in a healthy manner. And in that space, it can open the door to him possibly questioning the ideology that he embraced. One thing is for absolute certain, and this is going to be hard to hear, but you won't get him to change his mind with a brilliant argument, a clever social media video, or indisputable facts. The only way to potentially reach him or any loved one who's been radicalized is to give him the consistent experience of being treated with dignity and respect so that his unmet needs can be met in a healthy and sustainable way. Here is your third practical takeaway of the episode. If you have a radicalized person in your life who you deeply care about, commit to practicing radical civility for the next 30 days. This means no name calling, ideally not even your own head, no trying to win arguments, no sharing articles or videos or trying to change your mind, because as mentioned, that doesn't work. Instead, focus on listening, asking questions about their feelings and experiences, and showing consistent respect for them as a human being. Keep a journal during this time. Note how it feels to practice radical civility. Note any changes in their behavior or openness. Note what this practice does to your own stress levels and emotional well-being. Remember, you're not trying to fix them. You're not responsible for their choices. You're simply creating the conditions where positive change becomes possible. And here's something crucial. This approach protects your own mental health too. When you stop trying to control someone else's beliefs and focus on controlling your own behavior, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of their choices and start being an agent of positive change. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to acknowledge how incredibly difficult this work is. If you're dealing with a radicalized loved one, you're carrying a burden that most people will never understand. You're grieving the person they used to be while trying to love the person they've become. You're balancing hope with realistic expectations. You're doing some of the hardest emotional work that exists. Please know that you're not alone in the struggle. Please know that your efforts to respond with radical civility, even when it feels impossible, matters more than you realize. Let me leave you with this thought. In a world that seems increasingly divided, increasingly hostile, increasingly hopeless, the act of treating another human being with radical civility is in itself, as mentioned, a radical act. It's a declaration that you believe in the possibility of change. It's a statement that you refuse to let hatred have the last word. It's a commitment to being part of the solution even when the problem feels overwhelming. The three strategies we covered today aren't just about dealing with radicalization. They're about reclaiming our humanity in an increasingly inhumane world. First, learn to identify radicalization early so that we can intervene before it's too late. Second, understanding that bad behaviors are usually an unskilled expression of unmet needs, so we can address root causes rather than just symptoms. And third, practicing radical civility so we can create conditions for positive change rather than just adding to the cycle of incivility. Remember, you cannot control whether someone chooses to abandon their radical beliefs, but you can control whether you respond with wisdom or reactivity, with compassion or condemnation, with radical civility or with conventional hostility. Choose radical civility. Choose it because it's the right thing to do. Choose it because it protects your own soul. Choose it because it's the only approach that's any hope of bringing your loved one home. The world needs more people who are willing to do this impossibly hard work. The world needs more kindness extremists who understand that true strength isn't about winning arguments. It's about winning hearts. And that's what we need right now. This is your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and you now know that kindness can't be weak because you just experienced the strength of the Kindness Extremist podcast. Until next time, my friend, the journey to a kinder world continues. Thank you for listening to the Kindness Extremist podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. And I have one favor to ask. If you could kindly hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and a review, not only would that be incredibly kind, but by doing so, you're actively playing a role in growing this movement and ideally getting us one step closer to creating a kinder world. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the Kindness Extremist podcast. Bye for now.